All right, hey everyone, it's Dr. Jordan Feigenbaum. Thank you for purchasing the low back rehab template. Just kind of want to go through the template and some of the other materials that you got when you purchased this download. So first thing you should get is this low back pain rehab template sort of instruction manual. Opening this in Adobe Acrobat. You can also use Preview if you're on a Mac. There are other ways to open this. Click watch this video and you'll get to this video. There's other stuff that you should kind of be aware of, and I would click through this. This is all a clickable sort of table of contents just to kind of get a better background of what you're doing here. The other thing, after you kind of looked at the phases and everything else, use one of these back pain sort of scoring guides to give yourself a baseline. So I would, just follow the instructions here. Complete one of these assessments prior to starting the template. Do one halfway through, so after week 5, and at the completion. The first one's fine. The Start Back Screening Tool. If you click on this link, it'll take you to that screening or that sort of scoring tool. Also, if you're interested, these are just a few of the papers that we used. We felt like these were the highest yield ones and stuff you can read more about low back pain. There's also a ton of material that we've published on our YouTube and our website, barbellmedicine.com, so that you guys can be more informed about low back pain. But now let's just cover the template. So first thing I want you to do, just plug in the Sunday of the week that you're going to start here. Get your dates all lined up. So if it's a different date than this, just plug it in with numbers. We'll go through the tabs first. So this is a nutrition log. If you want to log your weight and your macros, that's all built in here. This will track a 7-day trailing average. So basically whatever the last 7 days you had, it'll tell you your average weight. It'll tell you your monthly weight and all that other stuff if you're so inclined to do so. If you don't want to fill this out, hey, that's fine too. Calculators, if you're trying to figure out your what weight to use based on the previous week's training or the previous month's training or something like that, or historically, whatever you have data for, and you want to use this, you can plug in your 1RM, you can plug in a 3RM, a 5RM, or any sort of thing that you know here. So like I said, if you have data from the previous week, you can use this. So let's say that I knew that my 1RM was 500 pounds. You can see all the weights populate here. And so if I need to figure out something like 8 reps at RPE 7, that kind of gives me some data there. If the previous week I did whatever exercise, let's say it was for 8 reps and I used 200 pounds, I can plug this in here. If it was RPE 10, if it was RPE 8, I would plug it down here, something like that. And again, this kind of figures out, gives you a ballpark for like what weights to aim for. So I'll delete that, make sure you guys don't get that. The analysis, this is really not terribly useful for this particular template. Just kind of want to cover it for you guys. Kind of plots your estimated 1RM over time. And so again, because this is a rehab template, we're not really tracking estimated 1RM as far as progress. Our progress is more pain, symptoms, stuff like that. But if you have any of our other templates, you'll be used to seeing this analysis tab. Overview, this is your training. So if you don't want to go to the weekly tabs, located at the bottom, you can see here, then you can just use this overview tab. It'll tell you what to do. So I'll zoom in here. So for instance, on day 1, week 1, these are the exercises. Exercise 1 is a high bar squat. Exercise 2 is bench press, no arch, paused. Exercise 3 is a conventional deadlift. Here are the reps. Here are the RPEs. Okay, again, we have RPE kind of chart and explanation in here in the instruction sort of PDF. If you go to RPE, there's a section here, rate of perceived exertion. You click on that, it'll tell you here what to do. Okay, so in any event, these are the exercises. And then one final note on the first 3 weeks, so this would be phase 1. Phase 1 may actually only last 1 week, but if you need some extra time to kind of get symptom free or reduce your symptoms enough to actually train, you can repeat the first 3 weeks, and we have those listed as weeks 1, 2, and 3 under phase 1. You can see that here. Notice these supplemental exercises, the crunch and the Superman. Do both exercises below for the prescribed rep range, and here's the prescribed rep range. And again, so here's day 2, here's day 3, day 4. There's no day 4 programming until phase 3. And then for GPP, general physical preparedness, we just have conditioning for the first couple weeks. And again, if you have any questions on what these things are, I would go to the instruction manual, GPP, you can figure out. And that works there. If there's no exercise, if an exercise you're not sure how to perform, what you can do is go to exercise demos. Now, some of these aren't in here, just like, for instance, the Superman's not in there yet. Crunch is not in there yet. We're trying to build that out. So what I would do is just go to Google, type in crunch exercise how to, and you'll find something on YouTube. Really, just find something that from a reputable source on YouTube. That would be our advice right now until we finish our exercise library. Now, on to the exercise selection. So for each of the phases, phase 1, phase 2, and if I scroll over here to phase 3, you can see there's all these exercise selection sort of menus. Now, how to do this, if you highlight the cell, click the drop-down menu, you can pick an exercise. These are all pre-filled based on just what we kind of would want you to do. But for instance, if a high bar back squat gives you a ton of symptoms, okay, then we'd move you to a front squat. And if front squat still gives you symptoms, we move you to a goblet squat using a dumbbell or a kettlebell. And if that still gives you symptoms, we do a bodyweight squat. And if none of those really can work for you based on the back pain that you're having right now, meaning that symptomatically you get worse when you perform these things, then you're probably a better candidate for one of our rehab consultations, just to kind of, because you need a little more specific sort of advice. But if you can do, one of these things, that's fine. If your normal squat's a low bar back squat and you can perform that with a light, empty barbell, I would start there. But for most folks, we feel like they probably were low bar squatting if they come to our business, want some help here, and we feel like moving to a high bar back squat may improve their symptoms just for the time being. Same thing on the bench press. As long as you can do this, go ahead and do that. If you can do it with an arch and you have no increased symptoms, that's fine. Conventional deadlift is one of our preferred deadlifts, but if you're a sumo deadlifter, you can do that. If you are normally a conventional deadlifter and the sumo deadlift doesn't give you any symptoms, whereas the conventional does, pick sumo. Again, if you click it, it'll switch, automatically populate your overview tab and all that other stuff. But we'll just keep this here. So you get to pick. Same thing for these exercises, and we give you a little brief rundown here on what these things are and which ones to pick. But if you don't want to do a crunch, you can do ab mat sit up, you can do a V-up, whatever. It doesn't matter if all these exercises are the same or they're all different. We just picked all of them, so that way you get a little exposure. It's kind of just a little rehab desensitization sort of protocol that we like using. Same thing on phase 2 exercise selection. So the idea is moving from phase 1 to phase 3 is that you're trying to return to normal training. So we're going to use some more similar elements that we feel like people see in their normal training. So again, if you were low bar back squatting before and you can do that now, I would do that. If not, you can move to a different exercise. We have these listed here, and a supplemental squat. Again, they give you a little rundown of what that is here. And really just pick something that you can do, you can train, you have the equipment for, and doesn't increase your symptoms. So it allows you to train. We put a glute ham sit-up and glute ham raise here for the spinal flexion, spinal extension section. If you don't have a glute ham developer, glute ham bench, or you can't do them, or they increase your symptoms, then we would just pick, crunch, ab mat sit-up, something like that. And over here, pick like a back extension, Superman, hip extension on a hip extension bench, something like that. Same sort of thing here, bench press, primary press. If you want to just overhead press, you can do that too. We just, felt like, again, trying to move people back to normal training, that the press does, if it's not really strict, can involve quite a bit of layback, and that might be sensitizing to some folks. So just picked a high incline bench press, but if you can press fine, go ahead and do that. For all these exercises, you can use a belt if you like. It's not a crutch. If that helps your training, go ahead and do that. Then it goes for phase 1 and certainly for phase 3. The main thing, again, is to decrease symptoms, decrease sensitization to pain, and get you back to training normally. So if you need to use a belt on all these things, that's fine too. If you don't need to use a belt on all of these because your symptoms are well managed, then for the primary stuff, for the first lifts of the day, we would definitely use a belt, particularly the squat, the bench press, and the deadlift. And then for your supplemental stuff, go beltless. It's our typical recommendation. And if we move to phase 3, got more choices here. And again, this is all pre-populated with what we feel like be a reasonable sort of way to return somebody to training. So let's just go over these weekly tabs. So if you're not going to use the overview tab, which again has all of your sort of training in one central location, okay, then you can go week by week. And this will tell you week 1, day 1, exercise 1, the rep range, periods, etc., etc. And so some of these things you'll see like a RPE4, RPE5, and that's below this kind of scale we give you. It should be really light. You know, RPE4 should be something where you could literally do another 6, 7 reps, something like that. It should be very light. And the main thing is, especially in the first phase, is that it doesn't increase your symptoms significantly, meaning that your pain's not worse at the end of the set than it was at the beginning of the set. If it's the same, that's fine, as long as it's not getting significantly worse. Things that would qualify as getting significantly worse, just worsening pain, okay, increased hesitation, increased sensitization, increased sort of, ability to do the normal movement because you're significantly compensating. If any of that happens, then we would recommend either changing the exercise, reaching out to us on the pain rehab forums, we can kind of troubleshoot for you, or if it's happening on all of the exercises, so globally, we would recommend a consultation, something like that. Also, if you're having like really acute pain, 10 out of 10 pain, and things are getting really, really gnarly for you, then you probably should be seen by a professional, just to make sure that, we're not missing anything and we're not just ignoring something. But for the most part, again, and stuff we talk about here in the low back pain rehab template, we expect that things are going to get better. So 90% of all this low back pain is non-specific and it's going to resolve. So anyway, these are the weekly tabs. Again, gives you this sort of play-by-play. At the bottom, you'll notice the GPP work. This is, again, general physical preparedness. We discussed that extensively in the attached PDF. In the first phase, we don't have anything except for conditioning, and we would recommend you do that conditioning. In the second phase, come down here, we're getting some more GPP work, upper back work, but still the direct ab work, direct trunk work actually comes within the actual nuts and bolts of the program. And then finally, when you get to phase 3, there's significantly more GPP work. So that's kind of how to do and use this template, how to run the program. So what do you do after this? So our recommendation would be either to hop back into a training program that you were doing before this, provided that you're going to be able to gradually increase the volume and the intensity and engage in progressive overload in an intelligent manner. If you feel like the program before, if it wasn't one of ours and, this is kind of a new thing for you, we would recommend starting at our beginner template or the Bridge 1.0 and then kind of hopping into our sort of template system. Alternatively, coaching, we do group programming, we do coaching. Any of those would be valid options. We just don't want you to leave this template and then go off and really crank up your volume and intensity in an less than intelligent manner. But this last phase of training should prepare you to go back into like relatively normal training. You see that you're doing relatively challenging sets of 5 and all that other stuff. One last word on these weekly tabs. So this is where you're going to log your training. So now let's say we're in phase 3. So we've done all this. At the end of week 8, your squat was a low bar back squat. And again, using a belt on the priority exercises like the low bar back squat, this first one, the bench press, you can use a belt there. And then if you want to on the deadlift, we would recommend that. But the rest of the exercises probably not unless you need to in order to train. So let's say, again, you've kind of worked your way back to normal level of strength, and so you're training relatively normally. So the way that I would go about trying to figure out, what are my targets here? So I would go over to your calculator tab, plug in a recent 1RM. Let's just say again that it was 500. Okay, and so here we can see that sets of 8. Here's the weight kind of thing. So if I'm working up to a set of 8 at 8, that's 370 pounds. And so when I go over here, I know that 370 at 8 is kind of where I'm planning on going. I can check back here, just noticing again, I'm working up to 8 reps at 8, 8 reps at 7, 8 reps at 6. Okay, so I go back, just kind of double check. 8 reps at 6 is probably going to be like 340 pounds. 8 reps at 7, 354, and then 370 is kind of where I'm aiming at. So my plan would be that 8 reps at 4, 8 reps at 5 are significantly lighter than that. So maybe I do 315 with 300 for 8, and I log that in, call that RP4, and then I do 315. Oh, sorry, we said 340 for 8. Oh, I'm sorry. We'll go 315 because we still got to do a set of 5, 8, and that's RP5, and then I do 335 for 8, and I call that RP6, and then I do 350 for 8, and I call that RP7, and then 370, I hit my target because everything felt like pretty normal, call that RP8. And so this logs all of your stuff. And this is exactly how I would do it. I do all your sets for 8 reps. And if you get a little fatigued on the way up, that's not a problem. Just take the weight down and stick to the RPE. So if, for instance, 350 felt like an 8, then just mark it as an 8, and that's where you go. And so the way that I would use this going forward for the next week, my estimated 1RM is 478. Okay, on my analysis tab, you see this here, 478 is my estimated 1RM. So now I put this in. So now on week 9, let's go look at the prescription. We're now in phase 3, low bar back squat. Again, I'd use a belt on this exercise. We're going to do sets of 5. So go back to the calculator. I know I need to figure out 5 at 5, 5 at 6, 5 at 7, 5 at 8. Here's my 1RM, come down here, sets of 5. So I know that 5 at 6 is going to be like 360, 365, something like that. 5 at 7 is 376, round that to 375. 5 at 8 is 388, 390. So again, I'd go here. So my set at 5 might be 335, 5, RP5, and then I would do 345, 5 at RP6, 355, I think it was 360 or 365, and I call that RP7, actually I think it was 365, sorry, and then 385, let's say I did for 5, did that 8, and actually I was supposed to do 2 sets at RP7 and then 2 sets at RP8. But in any event, so this is how I would use it. Now, if I was feeling actually pretty good, do my second set here. If I was feeling pretty good, if this felt a little maybe easier than a 7, and I know that my target was 388, maybe I'll do 390 for my set at 8. And then I would expect that you should be able to repeat a set at RP8. If it's RP9, I feel like you have to take weight off the bar, but sets at 8, I feel like you can do a cross. And again, this populates your estimated 1RM. You can go look at the analysis tab. There it is. I'm glad that happened on screen for everybody. The idea is to drive the estimated 1RM up over time. So the next week, my plan would be, when I look at this, go scroll up to day 1, have the same prescriptions, the same rep range, but I want to beat the estimated 1RM. All right, so again, I go back to the calculator tab. I know that my estimated 1RM was now 482. Look at my sets of 5. I know that in order to match the previous week's training, 391 is what I need to do. 390 again, for a set of 5. And so I know that if I've got it in me to do 392 or 395, then I try to do that. But you're only going to be able to find that out during the warm-up when you're hitting your sets at 7 and 6 and everything else like that. So that's how you use this template. That's and again, I would refer you guys to this template PDF. And then for any questions, send us an email, support@barbellmedicine.com. And thanks again for your business. Catch you guys out there next time.